Om Jnanam Jnana Shalakaya Chakshur Milchandrin Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Vishnu Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Samrupa Kadamayan Ati Suparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Yujata Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Raghunatham Vitam Sajivam Advaitam Savadutam Vijna Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Nilabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Sapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Namami Hare Hare Ancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Titanam Avanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Munitananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Are we? Chapter 13, text 15. Sarvendriya Gunabhasam Sarvendriya Vivarjitam Asaktam Sarvabhrichaiva Nirgunam Gunabhokricha. Relation? Sixteen. Ahirantaschaputanam Acharam Sharamevacha Sukshmatpat Tad Avigayam Purastam Chantike Chitat. Translation.
The Supreme Truth exists both internally and externally, in the moving and non-moving. He is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all.
Avibhaktam Chaputeshu Vibhaktam Ivacha Stitam Bhutapartri Chatajkeyam Krashishnu Prabha Vishnucha.
Although the Supersoul appears to be divided, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all.
Jyotisham apitaj jyotis tamasa paramuchate jnanam geyam jnanagamyam hridisarvasya vishtitam.
He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge. He is the object of knowledge, and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart.
Iti kshetram jata jnanam yayam choktam samasataha Ata etad vigyaya madbhavo yopapajyate.
19. Yeah.
Thus,
Thus, the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been similar, thoroughly, and thus attain to my nature.
Prakritim purusham chaiva vidyanadi ubhavapi vikaram shagunam chaiva yadi prakriti sambhavan.
material nature and the living entities should be understood to be beginningless. Their transformations and the modes of matter are products of material nature.
Kaya karanam kartre hetu prakriti ruchite purusha sukadukhanam okrite hetu ruchite.
Nature is said to be the cause of all material activities and effects, whereas the living entity is the cause of the various sufferings and enjoyments in this world.
Purusha prakriti stohi unkte prakriti janguna haram gunasya sarasa joni jamasu.
The living entity in material nature thus follows the ways of life, enjoying the three modes of nature. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil amongst various species.
Upadasthanamantacha artha bhokta maheshvaraha paramatme chapyukto dehesmin purusha paraha.
Yet in this body there is another, a transcendental enjoyer who is the Lord, the supreme proprietor, who exists as the overseer and permitter, and who is known as the super soul.
Aivam veti purusham akritim kagunaisa armadra vartamanopi asadyo vijayate.
One who understands this philosophy concerning material nature, the living entity, and the interaction of the modes of nature is sure to attain liberation. He will not take birth here again, regardless of his present position.
Finally, Kanenatmani Vashanti Kechiratmanamadvana Anye Sankhya Yogena Karma Yogena Chapare.
The super soul is perceived by some through meditation, by some through the cultivation of knowledge, and by others through working without fruitive desire.
Go back to 15. Vision and purport.
The super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all modes of material nature. Purport. The Supreme Lord, although the source of all the senses of the living entities, doesn't have material senses like they have. Actually, the individual souls have spiritual senses, but in conditioned life, they are covered with the material elements, and therefore the sense activities are exhibited through matter. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. His senses are transcendental and are therefore called nirguna. Guna means the modes, material modes, but his senses are without material covering. It should be understood that his senses are not exactly like ours. Although he is the source of all our sensual activities, he has his transcendental senses, which are uncontaminated. This is very nicely explained in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad in the verse Sarvata Pani Padam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has no hands which are materially contaminated, but he has his hands and accepts whatever sacrifice is offered to him. That is the distinction between the conditioned soul and the supersoul. He has no material eyes, but he has eyes. Otherwise, how could he see? He sees everything, past, present, and future. He lives within the heart of the living being, and he knows what we have done in the past, what we are doing now, and what is awaiting us in the future. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. He knows everything, but no one knows him. It is said that the Supreme Lord has no legs like us, but he can travel throughout space because he has spiritual legs. In other words, the Lord is not impersonal. He has his eyes, legs, hands, and everything else. And because we are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, we also have these things. But his hands, legs, eyes, and senses are not contaminated by material nature. Bhagavad Gita also confirms that when the Lord appears, he appears as he is by his internal potency. He is not contaminated by the material energy because he is the Lord of material energy. In the Vedic literature, we find that his whole embodiment is spiritual. He has his eternal form called Satchid Ananda Vigraha. He is full of all opulence. He is the proprietor of all wealth and the owner of all energy. He is the most intelligent and is full of knowledge. These are some of the symptoms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is maintainer of all living entities and the witness of all activity. As far as we can understand from Vedic literature, the Supreme Lord is always transcendental. Although we do not see his head, face, hands, or legs, he has them. And when we are elevated to the transcendental situation, then we can see the Lord's form. Due to materially contaminated senses, we cannot see his form. Therefore, the impersonalists who are still materially affected cannot understand the personality of Godhead.
No, only the devotees. This may seem like a very simple points here, quite logical, but by speculation, one can't come up with this conclusion. It's simply beyond one's intelligence. Atak Sri Krishna Namadi Abhalegram Indriyai Charamuki Jivado Jaswami Vishwas. He can only be perceived by transcendental senses, not by the mind, not by the sense perception. You can't see God with ordinary eyes. You can't see God or hear God with ordinary receiver, speaker. So therefore they become confused. They think, well, if he can't be seen, if he's not like us, that means he must have no form. No. He's not like us in that his form is not limited or material. But he's also not like us. And at the same time, he has form that's spiritual. Well, this is the This is what Krishna is explaining here in Bhagavad Gita. And no one can understand this. Unless he's engaged in devotional service, he won't be able to grasp. It won't make sense. It'll seem inconsistent. How can God be, at one sense, have personal features, at the same time not? Panipado. He has no hands, but he accepts everything that's offered to him. He has no material eyes, but he sees everything, past, present, and future, better than you. So this is how not to try to understand God, just by using your limited material faculties. Not possible that way. But by hearing submissively and engaging in devotional service, Tesham Yuktana Vajitam Pritipurvakam Stami Buddhyogam Tam Yamam Piansite. One engaged in devotional service, I give him the knowledge by which he can come to me, so he can understand me. Only the devotees can understand Krishna. Non-devotees, they can go and speculate for millions of lifetimes. But speculation is not the way to understand Krishna. Through speculation, you can understand the Brahman to some extent. Therefore, that process may employ some impersonal speculation that he must not be this in 1880. He must not. The absolute truth can't have this, Brahman can't have that. So they get some idea of what he isn't, which is not very clear. Getting some idea of what God isn't doesn't really tell you what he is. So still you're missing out. But only through the process of bhakti can Krishna can be understood through bhakti only, not through speculation or even mystic yoga practice to obtain mystic powers. One has to have at least some devotion, by some devotion mixed in with his meditation, and he can get some glimpse of the super soul. Whereas through devotional service, one gets full understanding of the impersonal Brahman, the Paramatma, super soul, and also the Bhagavan feature. So it's a better system, gives a more complete realization, and more satisfying. It's the highest. Any questions on this?
So, in the pure state, is the jiva unlimited in his consciousness?
No, not unlimited. He's more in his pure state. He's more we learn from the Dr. Swami Sindhu, the living entity, 50 out of 64 qualities, so whatever that is, some percent. He can have that percentage in a minute degree. Even that, he had to say 70% or whatever, 78%, but only in a minute degree. So he's never the same as God. He can never be equal in all respects. It's like the drop of water can never be equal to the whole ocean.
You were saying that this is the way to not understand God. But how do we actually understand God?
I said the way and why not. The way to understand is through devotional service. The way not to understand is to speculate, try to figure it out by speculation. Just thinking, well, it must be like this or it must not be like that. The opposite must have this. They try to give their philosophy and their reasoning, logic and argument. But God cannot be understood through logic and argument. Although logic and argument may be utilized as well. Just like we may use an automobile, it doesn't mean you have to have an automobile to understand God. But if you have an automobile, you can use it. And you can achieve God. Similarly, if you have logic and argument, you can use it. But it's not required.
Is karma underneath the three modes of nature, or what is higher, karma or the three modes? Is one working underneath the other?
Well, both energies of the Supreme Lord. Like Krishna says, when I long so Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. I long. Yeah, these Davi Yesha Gunomi Mai Mamaya Duratya. This material energy of mind is very difficult to overcome. But when it surrenders to me, can overcome very easily. So karma is difficult. You can't get free from karma. But by devotional service, you can. That's described in the Brahma Samhita. Everyone. But Yasvindra Gopamatavendra Mahosa Karma. Everyone beginning from a little Indra Gopa germ up to Indra, King of Heaven, is under the law of karma. Except if one is a devotee, one engages in devotional service, it's free from karma. So this is different aspect, three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, ignorance. They're working under the direction of the Lord in his different features as Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu. And Maya is interacting, even although the living entities are not exactly affected, as explained here in the purport, they're not exactly affected by the material energy, but they're covered. It's not that they, like oil and water don't mix, but water can carry the oil. Even though they're not mixing, it can carry it. So similar to living entities, although they're not actually affected by Maya, they can be covered. But Krishna doesn't even get covered. God doesn't get covered. He never falls down under the, therefore when the impersonalists say that they're Brahman, but now they're covered by ignorance, they're contradicting themselves. If he's Brahman, it means he's not covered by ignorance.
I think this is a comment. It's if you're involved in the three modes, then the law of karma acts. If you're entangled in the three modes, and it's stated somewhere, I just don't know where, but I think karma is above the three modes of material nature. I'm not certain, but I think it's stated somewhere.
I don't know how much on the topic it is, but I was just thinking, I often hear that it would be most beneficial if one has the chance to be a brahmachari, to remain as a brahmachari their whole life. And I was wondering like what it takes to do that.
Well, if you start off, you get a body that can be used as a brahmachari body. You can use it. That's fortunate. Good opportunity. But even if you have one of the body, you know, not brahmachari body, you can use it in devotional service. Krishna says, Yo Vaishas Tashudas, Epishu Bapayuna. Whether one has either the Yo Vaishya Tashudas, Epishanti Parangatim. He can achieve this supreme perfection, even in the body of a woman or a Vaishya or Shudra. If he uses it in devotional service, that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. And anyone in any position has the opportunity by engaging in devotion. And there's many examples. Haridas Thakur was born in a Mohammedan family, but he attained the highest position. He's the Acharya of the holy name, Nama Acharya. So if the Nama Acharya took his birth in a not even medical families. And there's so many examples of persons who take birth in lower families. There's a verse from the Bhagavatam. What's that verse? The different Kirata Hunanda Pulinda Pulkasha Abhir Shumba Yavanaka Sadhya Enye Chudapapa Yadpashasha. That's my Prabhu Vishnave Namaha. Prabhu Shanti. Prabhu Vishnave Namaha. So if one is born in family of the Kirata, Hunan, all these different types of bodies that are addicted to sense gratification. If he has association with the devotees and he's engaged in devotional service, he can achieve highest platform. So it's not a restriction. If one has a good opportunity like that, if he's given a good opportunity to raise in a Vedic culture, raise in a nice, that's also described in Bhagavad Gita. Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe Yoga Brashta Vijayate. If he doesn't reach perfection in one life, then he gets his birth, good devotee's family, or he's born in a family of Brahmins or aristocratic. So it's a good opportunity. But even if you're born in these Western families, not really a very, first Prabhupada took it both ways. Strictly from the point of view of Vedic culture, not a very high birth. But then he said, but you have all this wealth, have all this piety, you must have performed some pious activities to, he pointed out, he said, wherever you Americans go, you always have money. People who go around the world, they see that. Americans have money. It's just their karma. So, whether one has good karma or not good karma, if he's engaged in devotional service, he can supersede. Doesn't matter what his past, whether it doesn't depend on that. So everyone should try to utilize what facilities they've been given. Ami Partavya Pashija, Yebi Shupapayona, Shriyovya Shastashuras, Shebi Chanti Parangatim. And if he uses the opportunities he's got to the best ability, then he can reach the supreme destination by engaging in devotional service. But yes, generally it's recommended that if one stays brahmachari for his whole life, then he's 50% liberated. That's a good start. Take over.
Okay, so let's read the next text. Chapter 13, text 16, translation. The supreme truth exists both internally and externally, in the moving and non-moving. He is beyond the power of the material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. Purport. In Vedic literature, we understand that Narayana, the Supreme Person, is residing both outside and inside of every living entity. He is present both in the spiritual and material world. Although he is far, far away, still he is near to us. These are the statements of Vedic literature. Asino durang brajati shayano yati sarvataha. And because he is always engaged in transcendental bliss, we cannot understand how he is enjoying his full opulence. We cannot see or understand with these material senses. Therefore, in the Vedic language, it is said that to understand him, our material mind and senses cannot act, but one who has purified his mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness in devotional service can see him constantly. It is confirmed in Brahma Samhita that the devotee who has developed love for the Supreme God can see him always without cessation. And it is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 11.54 that he can be seen and understood only by devotional service. Bhaktya tvanandaya shakyaha. So, he's inside and outside of every living entity. So we chant in the verse, in the Nrsimhadev prayers, Bahir Nrsimho Hridaye Nrsimho. So he's outside and also he's inside the heart. So that's the Lord. He's inside and out. He exists both internally and externally. Bahir. In this Sanskrit, we have Bahir Anantash. Outside and Bahir Antash. Cha. Outside, inside also. Bhutanam. Of all living entities. Another, he's always enjoying. I like this point. Rishi Kumar was mentioning the other day that Krishna expands himself into the Purusha avatars and he's always enjoying, even in those forms. He's completely blissful, just breathing out the universes, which is pretty amazing. You know, as Mahavishnu, he doesn't do anything that he doesn't enjoy doing. And he's a better enjoyer than we are. He's the best enjoyer. Actually, this is a really interesting concept to me, that he's the person who knows how to have the best time. Nobody can have a better time than him. He's the coolest dude, and he's always having the best time. Doesn't matter what he's doing. And what's interesting for us is that we're so contaminated in our conditioned state that we think that he's having a better time in a certain Leela versus a different Leela. But actually, he's having unlimited pleasure in all his infinite pastimes eternally, and it's ever increasing bliss. And of course, he does say that he's desiring after the Ras Leela, but he's thinking about that. Sometimes there's some statements in the Shastra, but he has all of his infinite pastimes, which are equally as transcendental. And I was hearing a purport from Srila Prabhupada in the second canto, and Prabhupada was stating that the pure devotee knows that they're of the same transcendental nature, and therefore the pure devotee relishes the philosophical discussions on the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita as much as relishing the kisses of Krishna in the Ras Leela dance. So that's really far out, that from our perspective with these material senses, where in the material world, contaminated and perverted sex attraction is the highest of pleasures, we cannot, we think that that's somehow more elevated than Krishna's, or more pure or more exalted than Krishna's other pastimes. Of course, when we talk about these things, we have to see both sides, that yes, they're non-different in that they're both Krishna's blissful pastimes, and he's always enjoying ever new transcendental bliss. But at the same time, there's different variegated degrees of perfection or on that level. So we have to purify our mind and senses by practicing Krishna consciousness and devotional service, and then we can see Krishna constantly. So we have to progress step by step through the transcendental literatures under the guidance of the Acharya, and we can have firm faith that if we always stay the humble servant of the servants of Krishna, then our success is guaranteed. So we have to, as Maharaj was saying, we have to try our best to use this opportunity, whatever opportunity we have. As soon as we hear about devotional service, the opportunity is there for us. That's the grace of the spiritual master. By contact with the devotees and the spiritual master, one receives the seed of devotional service, and sincerity is the trump card for all the karmic difficulties which are in the way. Of course, when there are very heavy karmic obstacles, then one has to make whatever advancement he can make. So, but we have to always remember that it can be done in one lifetime. Okay? Some other points?
I just had a question. It's not directly on topic, but it has to do with preaching. So I was just wondering, what is our impediment when it comes to preaching Krishna consciousness? Speaking the truth in the way that's pleasing the spiritual master and Krishna. What's the impediment there?
I want to leave some time for Rishi's thoughts, but I was hearing earlier today in the second canto that envy is the cause of concocted devotional service. So a type of a concoction means that we're distributing some information which is less than pleasing to the spiritual master, or we're acting in a way which is less than pleasing to the spiritual master. So there's a type of an envy, which means, hey, I don't want him to know better than me. So I bring him down and I make my own rules for the game. So if we concoct and we share something other than, the absolute truth, or we share something other than what Krishna has shared or the Guru has shared, then it's because we're envious of the spiritual master and we're envious of Krishna. So we'll try to get some name and fame for ourselves by sharing something we think they'll appreciate, but we'll secretly be stealing the credit because actually it was my idea. I didn't even get it from Guru. I made it. Anyway, that's kind of weird. Rishi Kumar Prabhu.
To give an example for the topic you were saying earlier with the Supreme Lord always enjoying in the Dasavatar Sutram, Vasati dasana shikare darani tavalagna Shashini kalanka kalevani magna Keshavadrita shukara rupa jaya jagadisha hare. When Krishna came as Kurma, and they placed the gigantic Mandara mountain on his back, it's explained that he had, so for his enjoyment, he had this transcendental itch on his back, and the demons and the demigods turning this huge mountain on the Lord's back, it scratched this itch and made this circle-like depression on his shell. So even in that situation, he's enjoying. And then Prabhupada gives the example that people, they want to hear about the Ras Leela, like you were saying, but they don't want to hear about Krishna's killing the demons. But he also gives the examples in the Srimad Bhagavatam that when, okay, that's the second one. And then just the third little point or example is that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, when Bhishma Dev is fighting against Krishna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, someone might see those as arrows, and they might see what looks to be like blood on the form of the Lord. But in reality, and the wounds were like, the Prabhupada says, like the bite of a lover. So the yeah, Krishna is always enjoying in any of these pastimes, even when it's like a battlefield or something like this. And so it's the devotees who have the purified vision of reality, they can actually see it for what it is. It's not arrows coming at the form of the Lord, but there's flowers being thrown to him. And there's actually no blood from the form of the Lord. It's this nice exchange. So I just wanted to give those examples. Okay, Hare Krishna.
Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees.